Hey, this is Brian Briscoe from Four Oaks Capital, and today I'm going to talk about time. It's something that's a commodity, that everybody has exactly the same amount of. Everybody has, 24 hours a day. I guess technically it's like 23 hours and 50 something minutes, but who cares? Really, it's something that we all have. We all need to be able to take the most advantage of to become successful in our lives. And something that I've heard a lot is there's a distinction between, finding time and making time, or there's a book that I keep on referring to on this podcast, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. One thing he talks about is you instead of prioritizing your schedule, you schedule your priorities. And I'd say that's equivalent to, instead of finding time for things, you make time for your priorities. Um, Something else that I've read recently, and I'll restate it, is if you look at your schedule, if you were to take your schedule and break it down over the previous week and look at where you have spent most of your time, that's also what you prioritize. That's what you hold most valuable. So look over your time in the last week. Did you spend a lot of time on Netflix, on Hulu, or on one of these streaming apps watching your favorite show, or did you spend a lot of time working on your priorities? Now, a couple of things. A lot of people are busy. I understand that. When I started this business, I was working at the Pentagon. I was still active duty military. I moved to the DC area in 2018, and it was with that move that I decided that I would start working on multifamily and start ramping up my exit plan from the military. And at this time, I would leave my house before 6 o'clock most days to go to work, and I wouldn't get home until almost 7 p.m. most days. And you look at how many waking hours you have in a given day, that's 13 hours right there, out of 18. Doesn't count the eating time, doesn't count the getting ready, the hygiene, everything else. And on the surface, I did not have a lot of free time to schedule my priorities because I was at work, or I was going to work, or something like that. But when I would look closer, I was able to see white spaces on my daily schedule. And I made a couple of small fixes to how I did things to be able to make time. For example, instead of driving to the Pentagon every day, which would have been about, maybe 45 minutes to an hour in the morning, and, an hour to hour and 20 minutes in the evening, I started taking public transportation. I took the DC metro system, the subway, and that it didn't free up time. It actually took me more time to take public transportation. But what it did is it allowed me to actually use that time for something more important. Instead of sitting behind the wheel and potentially just listening to a podcast and being a passive, listener to something, I was able to actively work towards something. I bought an iPad. I bought, an iPhone to be able to do things on the metro system. So if I was learning about something, I could preload all the information on my iPad. I could read, I could learn whatever I needed to learn, and once I got past that process, I could type out emails to brokers, or emails to lenders, or emails to potential investors, and I could even underwrite properties, while on the metro. I just had to preload everything on my iPad. A little bit of planning went a long way. And like I said, although it added a small amount of commute of time away from home to my day, it was probably 15 extra minutes in the morning and 15 extra minutes in the evening. I was able to basically find 2 hours worth of time every single day that I could work towards my priorities. In addition to that, lunch. Everybody takes a lunch break. It's normal. I would also spend, sometimes up to 30 minutes on a lunch break, sitting in the subway shop across from my office in the Pentagon, or down at the gym in the Pentagon where they actually have Wi-Fi, and work towards things. So that's something that I was able to do, was just look at my schedule, find the currently existing white space, and use that white space towards my priorities. Now, the other thing that, I was able to do was outsource a lot of things. Before I had made the decision to go into multifamily, I was still mowing my lawn every week, and I had the attitude that, why am I going to pay somebody, 30 or 40 or $50 a week to mow a lawn when I can just do it myself and save that money. But what I started realizing is that the time that I spent working towards multifamily was ultimately going to pay a lot more than I would pay somebody else to mow my lawn. So what what else I would suggest is to outsource a lot of the minimum wage tasks that you do, and I know this may not be, economically possible for some people, but to be able to outsource these tasks is going to give you more time to do what you need to do. And like I said, just with the mowing lawn question, when I was in the DC area, we had a large lawn and it was on a hill, really steep. It would take about an hour to mow the lawn. So every time I had somebody else mow the lawn, we paid probably too much for it. But every time I had somebody else mow the lawn, it bought me back 1 hour to work towards my priorities. So just some ideas, like I said, we're all crunched on time. There's not a lot we can do. Um, and I will add one more thing. Right now, one thing that I enjoy doing is taking my kids to their sports practices, to gymnastics, to whatever they do. It's something that I wasn't able to do most of the 20 years that I was on active duty. And now it's fun, to sit in the car with my kids and, go to their practices. But I will bring my laptop or my iPad with me. And, I do watch them at practice, but I'll open up my laptop for 20 or 30 minutes and spend a little bit of time, sitting on a gym floor or in a chair on the side of the gymnastics arena and punch away on some keys. So there are definitely ways where, we can find ways to to work on the things that matter to us. So end of the day, here's what here's a couple of things, just to recap a couple of things that I would suggest. Number one, look for the things that don't need to be there. I briefly talked about this up front, like, look at your Netflix streaming, the things that you do that don't need to be there, and eliminate those first. Number two, look for current white spaces on your calendar that already exist that you can fill in with your priorities. Number three, outsource stuff. And number four, just take advantage of every minute that you have, because it's one thing that you'll never get to buy back. You'll never be able to have more time than you currently do. That's it for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you're able to um, make the time to pursue your goals. Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community, the Tribe of Titans, you're missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description or go to thetribeoftitans.info. And we'll see you there.